Dwayne Johnson and Zac Efron hit the beach in Baywatch. Johnny Depp and Jeffrey Rush return to the seas in Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Men Tell No Tales. Ed Helms voices a mostly naked superhero in Captain Underpants, the first epic movie. And Gal Gadot picks up the sword, shield, tiara, and lasso for Wonder Woman. That's all on this edition of Movies with Mark. Hi, I'm Mark McPherson, movie critic for Moviespoon.com. I'm a little bit under the weather right now, but that's not going to stop me from talking about 4 big summer movies that are currently in theaters right now. Our first movie is Wonder Woman, and wow, does it feel good to finally have a DC Comics movie that knows what the heck it's doing and doesn't feel all over the place with what it's trying to do. Doesn't make it a great film, but still, to have a film that actually has an idea of what it's trying to do and actually feels coherent is such a good feeling. Gal Gadot plays Diana, the woman who would grow up to become Wonder Woman. Before she took up the sword and shield, she lived on a secret island of Amazons that used to be guarded by some protective force field, but when man starts coming through, she starts becoming interested in the world outside of her island. And after she discovers Steve Trevor, played by Chris Pine, has come there as a spy and he's trying to stop a war that's going on in his own world, well, Diana just can't resist the urge to pick up a sword, shield, and her tiara, and her lasso, and jump right into combat. She's so eager to become the hero that we know she will become in Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. This film actually made me appreciate Wonder Woman's role in Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice a little bit more, only because her role in that felt a little bit out of left field, but when you see, how much innocence and how much power and how much, will she has to do the right thing, you kind of do appreciate her. She's kind of like the life support that came into that film. It felt like she came from a different film, and it's very obvious because when you see Wonder Woman, it doesn't feel as dark and glib and depressing as Batman vs. Superman. It feels colorful, it feels heroic, it feels intense, it feels fun, it feels like like an actual summer superhero movie. The movie does deal with a couple of heavier themes, like, Diana trying to comprehend the world of man and trying to come to grips with the fact that, man has some evil in their heart and that, she can't, solve everything with, such simple acts of, like, killing gods or something like that. Which, I mean, that makes her character a lot more relatable and a lot more lovable because she does have this sort of plucky nature to her as this god who's come to the world of man to try to, like, solve their problems and think that, oh, well, it's pretty easy. I take up the sword, I'm a good person, and, I understand this is in the middle of World War I, but I'm pretty sure I could solve all this, just with my shield and my sword, I can help out people. And you do really root for her, because there are several scenes where she sees that something's going wrong, and she's like, whoa, wait a minute, all these people are suffering, we should do something, and there's these evil people who are shooting at civilians, we need to do something about this. And you admire her spirit the whole way through. It also helps that Chris Pine is kind of leading her through this world as this sort of like fish out of water story. And there are some very cute moments between the two, like when Chris Pine's character Steve Trevor is trying to get her used to the world of man and what women wear and how women are seen in their society and how their military and their governments work. And where morality lies and what people do when they're not in the middle of combat, and just how the world of man works, and it leads to some really funny moments. Moments that actually feel naturally funny, as opposed to, like a studio executive saying, okay, here's where we have the comedy moment, and here's where we have the action scene. No, it actually has a pretty decent flow to it. Not a great flow, but a decent enough flow where you're really into the film, and it's got some really good pacing to it, I think. What really works for the film is that it never takes itself too seriously. I mean, how could you take a film even though it's about World War I, you can't really take a film that seriously when it involves Wonder Woman trying to defeat Ares, the god of war, and Ares is working with the evil Dr. Poison, who's making a poison gas that will change the course of the war. I mean, you can't take that stuff too seriously, and thankfully, the movie, it never really has that kind of, like, winking element of it, try to say, like, man, look how goofy this is. But it's got enough of kind of this knowing nature where it kind of lets you, the audience, laugh at it more. I mean, I was kind of laughing at the fact that there's this villain called Dr. Poison who looks like kind of like the female version of Phantom of the Opera. And it's just like such a silly name that there's a moment where Steve Trevor finds this woman at a party and comes up to her with a drink, and I just imagine in my mind him saying, "Ah, Dr. Poison, I presume." I mean, that's it's so ridiculous, but I mean, it takes itself earnestly enough where you can still kind of enjoy it and laugh along with it, rather than laugh at it as much. I think because it realizes enough about how goofy it is, especially when, you know, Wonder Woman is battling Ares, who essentially wants chaos and war and destruction, and it's kind of this, the only way to fight the Gorn is not to fight the Gorn. It's kind of that deal with Ares, even though Wonder Woman does get a lot of good hits and sword slashes and uses the big braces to make these big shields or explosions or whatever. So yeah, there's some decent fight scenes in there between her and Ares, mostly because the soldiers that she's fighting, let's face it, they don't stand a chance against her. I mean, if she can go into battle with her shield and defeat, like, machine guns and pistols and all sorts of crap, she's unstoppable. So, of course, you gotta have Ares come in there to be a worthy foe for her to fight. I think what I like best about this film, and it makes me appreciate Batman vs. Superman a little bit more and make me a little bit more excited for Justice League, was that Wonder Woman does have this chipper spirit to her, and also this spirit to make her sort of like a little bit of a leader, where you kind of see her bonding with this ragtag group that Steve Trevor assembles to go into Germany to stop the evil Dr. Poison, which, I'm sorry, Dr. Poison just is such a fun name to me. It's such a ridiculous villain, but it works so well in this context here, because, as a summer superhero film, it's fun. But yeah, I like the camaraderie she has between this ragtag group of soldiers that go on with her. It's not a great bonding experience. You don't get to learn too much about these characters, but just enough where, they're likable enough and you care what happens to them in this war. There are some pretty cool action scenes here. I mean, there's some scenes where Diana gets to use her shield and sword and fight all these different soldiers in all sorts of ways. It does get a little bit cartoonish at points, mainly because they want to have Wonder Woman be this hero who can, jump and scale high heights and have this quick speed and can, run really fast. And it makes her look a bit like a cartoon at times, just because of the CGI they're using here. It doesn't quite work as well, but I think it's sufficient enough. Especially because, I went into this film not taking it too seriously, because, it's kind of, Wonder Woman's a little bit ridiculous, and she's fighting a ridiculous villain, and it's kind of a, kind of a familiar superhero scenario. Most of the fight scenes are pretty cool, actually. You get to see Wonder Woman do some neat stuff, and they're coherent enough where you can tell what's going on, which is more than you could say for a lot of action films. It does use a little bit more of the slow motion here, but again, the slow motion helps you figure out, what the heck is going on in these scenes, which has Wonder Woman jumping through buildings and smashing up soldiers and running on battlefields, but you can tell what's going on the whole time. As a summer superhero flick, yeah, Wonder Woman's not bad. I had a bit of fun with it. It has its faults, mainly with some of, like, the fight scenes, and there are some rather ridiculous scenes that you kind of laugh at, like the fact that Wonder Woman's able to walk into a party of Germans with one that she's trying to assassinate and have a sword behind her back in her dress the whole time and no one really notices, and just the whole idea of Dr. Poison being the villain. Yeah, it's a little bit silly, especially with, the whole Ares thing, but yeah, it never takes itself too seriously. It never takes itself, never has too much fun with the material. So yeah, it's just a very solid superhero flick that's I actually had quite a bit of fun at. So 3 stars for Wonder Woman. Our next film is Captain Underpants, the first epic movie, and with a title like that, you can expect some lowbrow humor. And yes, for every kid, this is going to be their lowbrow animated fantasy come true. The film follows 2 kids, George and Harold, who spend their time writing and drawing their own comic book called Captain Underpants. And when they're not doing that, they're playing pranks while they're in school, mainly because school seems so depressing to them and their classmates that they have to liven it up a little bit by playing pranks on the teachers and principal. Unfortunately, the evil Principal Krupp is onto their game, and he wants to stop their hijinks by putting them in separate classes. Now to them, to George and Harold, this is like the ultimate offense. This is something that's going to destroy their friendship. They think there's no way we can be together or be as creative creative or be a prank duo unless we're together again. So, in a last-ditch effort to stop their principal, they hypnotize him into believing that he is the superhero that they've created called Captain Underpants. And the movie just takes a weird route from here. It goes in so many weird directions, mainly with the fact that they have to keep the identity of Captain Underpants a secret, try to make sure that he doesn't get into trouble or hurt himself, and they also have to deal with the fact that there's now a new science teacher in their school by the name of, are you ready for this name? Professor Poopy Pants. I forgot his full name, but I'm pretty sure that diarrhea is mixed in there somewhere. So yeah, very, very lowbrow humor, very much aimed at kids. And, a lot of, adults are going to be going into this film going like, okay, all right, this is poop jokes and lowbrow jokes and stuff like that. But I actually had quite a bit of fun at this film. Now, I know a couple people are going to think that I'm a bit of a hypocrite because on the last show I reviewed Diary of a Wimpy Kid: The Long Haul, which did involve a lot of jokes about poop and bodily functions and all sorts of, the similar material like that, and I hated the hell out of that film. And I like Captain Underpants, but now why would I like this film as opposed to Diary of a Wimpy Kid? Well, that's mainly because they find creative uses of fart jokes. Like, yeah, they want to use farts and burps and bodily functions. They want to make, silly names like Poopy Pants and Captain Underpants, stuff like that, that kids can laugh at. But I like this a little bit more, mainly because they find creative stuff to do with fart jokes. Like one of the first things that George and Harold do with Captain Underpants is they have their principal hold a school concert in which all the students play music. Instead of playing musical instruments, they find ways to make themselves fart. And so you have sort of a fart orchestra going. And it's not just funny because of the farts, it's more funny because of the fact that the principal is actually trying to be like a serious conductor, that he's conducting the farts, and the fact that the whole concert ends with sort of an applause and these critical, these sort of like soundbite, these like critical praises of like, 3.5 stars or like the official selection of some film festival or whatever. So it actually finds more, yeah, it's not just funny to hear someone fart or to say like like something like Poopy Pants, stuff like that, but they try to find more fun stuff to do with it through there. There are a few small jokes for adults, like I like the fact that, Professor Poopy Pants is looking at like a child's brain and determines like, oh, there's different sections of it, like here's the section that will only eat cheeseburgers and chicken nuggets and stuff like that, little jokes like that, but it's mostly going to be for kids. Roger Ebert once said that, the difference between a family film and a kid's film is that a family film will please, all the every member of the family, whereas kids' films will bore adults. So I'm a little bit conflicted about whether to say that it's a kid's film or not, only because, looking at it, because I went with a bunch of kids and all the kids were loving it, and I kind of admire its spirit. I mean, I like the characters. They have there's a good pacing, good tone to it, great characters that you want to follow with it. Yeah, like the jokes are lowbrow, but the important thing is I think that they know they're lowbrow. There are certain points where, the principal is saying like, oh, well, your comic book, it's mostly potty humor and it's so low and gross, but it has its merits. I think it works pretty well for kids. I mean, it deals with, stuff that kids feel are very serious subjects to them. Like, if you get separated from your best friend in school, yeah, it's like the end of the world, and like you gotta do something about it. So I admire that spirit about the film. I also like the fact that this is a very simple story. After something like the Boss Baby, which tried to have this, convoluted plot about immortal babies and this puppy that will remain cute forever, and then like the stagnation of the dog market, whatever, just like, it's too much. This one's a very simple story about Professor Poopy Pants trying to destroy the laughter in every child so that nobody will ever laugh at his name again. It's a very simple supervillain story, but I think it works for this film. So yeah, I mean, you can call me immature if you want, but there is enough here that I actually had a good time while watching Captain Underpants, the first epic movie. I mean, kids are gonna love it, and maybe if you're a child at heart, maybe you'll love it like me. So I'm gonna have to give Captain Underpants, the first epic movie, 3 stars. Our next film is Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Men Tell No Tales, and wow, what a forgettable title. In fact, I can barely tell the difference between On Stranger Tide and At World's End, as most people couldn't. So I doubt that many people are going to remember Dead Men Tell No Tales and get it lost in the shuffle, so just think of this as Pirates of the Caribbean 5. Let's just call it what it is. Of course, Johnny Depp is back once again as Jack Sparrow, the character we've all known, and he hasn't changed one bit. Seriously, he hasn't really changed at all. We don't really know anything more about this character. He hasn't really changed his attitudes or anything. He's the same old character. At this point, he's pretty much like, you know, a James Bond type figure, where we know pretty much everything there is to know about him, and there isn't much to build on from him from there. Unless, of course, you know, you really need to know the origin of Jack Sparrow's hat. If you want to know the epic story of how Jack Sparrow got his hat, well, then I guess this is your movie? That's really what you want, I suppose. Jeffrey Rush is back once again as Captain Barbossa, and yeah, there's not much to his character either. There is some development given to his character in this film, but he's mostly the same character we know from the previous Pirates films. I actually like him a little bit more than I like Jack Sparrow, just because Rush is playing up the whole pirate angle so well, and he's got a little bit more smarts to him, and I just love his whole nature. I mean, he's such a great pirate. I think every actor should look to him as an example of how to do a pirate captain right, and just how to make him a very charismatic and likable pirate. It's especially for someone like Captain Barbossa, whose, you know, allegiances tend to shift every once in a while. Similar to Jack Sparrow just seems like very like chaotic, but Barbossa is kind of a character who, you know, like you can kind of see the gears going in his head about, you know, where he wants to go for the next treasure, who he wants to kill, who he wants to deceive. It's such a great character to watch. I actually enjoy watching him more than I do Jack Sparrow. They're not the only returning characters, however, as Orlando Bloom is back in the role of Will Turner, and wow, remember the last Pirates movie that Orlando Bloom was in? That was, I believe that was At World's End, and that was about 10 years ago. Huh. And this film actually picks up where that film more or less left off, with Will Turner being under this pirate curse. And it's like, oh no, what are we going to do? How do we stop this curse? Well, Will Turner's son is on the case. He's going to find something that can stop the curse. Now, what's this about, like, Will Turner's son? Yes, he has a son, and he's, like, teenage now, so now he can go off and find this magical trident that will cure every curse of the sea. And yes, I do mean every single curse in the sea will be wiped out. So Will Turner's son is Henry Turner, and he's mostly about as, you know, useless as Orlando Bloom was in the Pirates movies, with not a whole lot of character. I mean, his whole deal is that he believes in ghosts, having served on pirate ships where pirate ghosts have attacked them and slaughtered the entire crew and only left him alive to tell the tale. And of course everyone thinks he's out of his mind, especially the lovely Karina, who only believes in science and studying the stars. I mean, she's a complete nerd for the stars. And they sort of had this debate about, you know, superstition versus science, but it doesn't really go anywhere, and they're just going to end up being the romantic leads, similar to how Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley were in the previous Pirates films. Nothing all that involving, but, you know, it's, you know, you got to show some romance on screen, so there are our two romantic leads. One great addition to the cast, though, is Javier Bardem as the evil ghost pirate captain, Captain Salazar. You know, Bardem is just a great actor in general, and here he's hamming it up as much as he can as this evil pirate ghost who wants to defeat Jack Sparrow because Jack bested him once and sent his entire crew to a terrible death, and he wants revenge, as he's sworn revenge on all pirates. And he's playing up this role as best he can, and I really like him. I really like his undead crew, too. They got these great visual effects where it looks like they're constantly underwater, where their hair is moving, and their flesh is hanging off, and even their ship is undead. Their very pirate ship has this kind of like, it's missing wood from the bottom, and basically when it wants to attack when it wants to attack ships, it launches itself upward and opens itself up and tries to eat ships like it's some giant insect. And it's a really cool effect. I really wanted to like this film because I thought some of the action sequences were really pretty cool. There's a funny sequence where Jack narrowly escapes death via a guillotine. There's another cool scene where there's a bunch of cool scenes on with ship-to-ship combat with Salazar and Jack Sparrow battling one another. There's some pretty cool stuff in there, and I like the visual effects here. Like I said, with Salazar's ship, it's pretty cool. but I feel the need that the Pirates franchise really isn't going anywhere. It's just kind of like finding these neat battle sequences, and then just kind of adding in the same characters, and even the same templates of characters. Like, I mean, yeah, we have the addition of Henry and Karina as our young romantic leads, but they're essentially, you know, they're just Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley all over again. So there's not much to appreciate on the character front, so most of the time you're just watching these neat action sequences, which are cool, but you know, in terms of, you know, adding stuff that the characters, you know, I'm not really digging on this as much, especially when they try to wedge a lot into the third act for reveals about, you know, about Henry and Karina and Captain Barbossa's past. Like, yeah, the one character who you do learn something about is Captain Barbossa. Unfortunately, you learn it in the third act as sort of like a last-minute twist that you're kind of like, oh, okay, I think there should have been more to this, but I guess there isn't, so I guess we're just going to proceed to the next action sequence. One thing that really irritated me about this film is that, you know, okay, this is the 5th Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and it's another one involving the undead. And it's established fairly early in the film that when they fight the undead, they're missing parts of their body, and, you know, that swords can go right through them, so you can't really kill the undead. So why is Jack Sparrow and Captain Barbossa still getting into sword fights with these ghosts when, you know, you clearly can't do anything to them? Can't they find a different method of fighting ghosts? Did they just... I mean, it's been 5 films. Can they find some other way to fight pirate ghosts in any other way? And that's the main problem with Dead Men Tell No Tales, is that it repeats the same stuff we've seen in every Pirates film before, and you know, they leave the ending of this film open for a sequel, and a sequel that I'm not enthused about going into because I know it's just going to be more of the same. The characters are really getting stale here, and you can only film so many great action sequences and add in so much hamming up of the acting until it just becomes repetitive and stale. And I think the Pirates of the Caribbean movies are at that point right now where, you know, they're losing their edge, they're losing steam. They need to make some drastic change here. It just feels like more of the same. So, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales will get 2 stars. Our next film is Baywatch, which can't decide if it's trying to take itself seriously as an action comedy version of the syndicated TV series from the 1990s, or if it wants to be a knowing parody that mocks Baywatch. But I mean, was there anything all that much to mock about Baywatch? I mean, Baywatch did a pretty good job making fun of itself. I mean, heck, there was even a whole parody series called Son of the Beach, which did a great job parodying Baywatch. So why are we digging Baywatch up again? I mean, is David Hasselhoff really that big of a deal now that we gotta have a Baywatch movie? I don't know. In this film, Dwayne Johnson plays Mitch Buchanan. Yeah, remember Mitch Buchanan from Baywatch? No? How about David Hasselhoff? Yeah, everyone remembers David Hasselhoff. That's because everyone remembers, you know, more tertiary elements of Baywatch other than Baywatch itself. Because let's face it, Baywatch was such a ridiculous idea for a show. I mean, lifeguard drama, and it spun itself into weird directions. Like they made a spin-off series called Baywatch Nights, in which they solved X-Files style crime stories. This was a real show. So is Dwayne Johnson a good fit as Mitch? Well, it's hard to tell. Mostly it looks like just Dwayne Johnson is playing himself here because his character really doesn't have that much to him. I mean, he's a very likable guy. He's the lead lifeguard at a beach. You know, most people seem to like him, and he's justified just about everything he does, including breaking the law at several points. Like, everyone seems to like him. He's a pretty perfect character, so I guess it's just Dwayne Johnson just being a naturally likable guy without much of an arc to himself. So we gotta look to the other characters to have some sort of arc. I mean, there's a fat nerd who's trying out to be a lifeguard and under the watch of Dwayne Johnson. And at first you want to root for this guy because he desperately wants to win the heart of the beautiful CJ, this lovely blonde with big boobs, and he wants to make this woman his girlfriend. And, you know, you kind of want to root for him to get there, but the thing is, he's already got this girl in the bag. There are several points where it's clear that she loves this guy. She loves him so much, and so any attempt that Ronnie tries to make at being a better guy or a more heroic person or to win the heart of CJ, it's just sort of like topping him off. I mean, he's already got the girl in the bag. There's no real reason to root for him at that point. The only character who has a little bit of an arc is Zac Efron's character of Matt, a former Olympic athlete who's been disgraced, and he's got to learn some humility. Well, maybe he can do it on the beach when he trains to become a lifeguard. Or maybe he can do it in this kind of drug ring operation bust that Dwayne Johnson decides that, oh yeah, you know, we're lifeguards, but we found drugs on the beach, so we're going to investigate this drug corruption ring and this retail scam that's going to try to buy up the beach, and we're going to get in this action comedy where we wear suits and we go undercover and we try to foil you know, drug running and solve all these murder cases. And it's like, did they want this to be an action comedy? And it's confusing because, like, there's several points where there's a point early on where it feels like it's going to be a lifeguard movie because Dwayne Johnson's character takes lifeguarding very seriously and says that, you know, you have to think about people. They showcase 2 rescue scenes where they show, like, you know, you can't mess around. This is very important stuff. You have to be a committed lifeguard, and you got to know how to deal with tough situations where people's lives are on the line. But then in the second act, he just goes off and to solve, like, the whole drug ring operation and abandons his post. Now, I wouldn't have minded this as much if they didn't point this out constantly in the film. There's one cop in the film who's probably the only likable character, at least for me, who keeps pointing out the fact that, you know, you're lifeguards. You don't do this. You don't go out and solve crimes. And he points this out several times, especially during a scene where it's like, you guys abandoned your post and there was a dead body in the water. What were you doing? It's like, yeah, seriously, what were you doing? What film is this trying to be? And, you know, even on all those separate levels, I don't think it really works. I don't think it works trying to be, you know, this kind of lifeguard rescue drama because it's overblown with these sequences where boats are blowing up, and it doesn't quite work as like a raunchy comedy because, like, most of its raunch is for, like, you know, mostly involves characters talking about penises and balls the whole time and then talking about their boobs the whole time. And especially, like, even if you go on the most, like, base level of what Baywatch was about, which is, you know, showing Pamela Anderson's bouncing boobs in slow motion. You get a lot of slow motion here to the point where you hate slow motion, and you won't really get any, you know, sorry dudes, but you're not getting any boobs in this movie. You will get a lot of penises, including a corpse penis, which, you know, Dwayne Johnson, he seems really concerned about this case. It's like, oh man, there's this politician that was murdered. How did this happen? This is so horrible that a politician was murdered. But he doesn't think nothing of, you know, using the politician's corpse of a penis to play a prank on Zac Efron. So this film is just all over the place. It has no idea what it's trying to be, and it's just desperately trying to find comedy at any place that it can, and it's struggling. You can feel Dwayne Johnson trying to make this comedy work, but, you know, you can only make so many penis jokes before they run out of steam and they're not funny anymore. There's even a point in the film where Dwayne Johnson's pretty much just written out of the film, and I can't blame him if that's what he wanted, because there's not much he can do in this film. There's not much that anyone can do. They're given such terrible material here that's not only poorly written, but also unfocused. This movie doesn't know what it's trying to be. One moment it's trying to be this, you know, silly, slapsticky, raunchy comedy, and then the next moment there's these very grisly murders where people are getting, like, chomped up by sharks and stuff like that. It's like, what is this film? So yeah, Baywatch, it just doesn't work, and I think you'd honestly have more fun just going back and watching the original TV show with a bunch of beers and just laughing it up and making fun of the show as much as you can, because this movie, you know, it's not like 21 Jump Street where it had an idea of what to make fun of and where to find comedy. This film, it just doesn't know where it's going and doesn't know what type of movie it wants to be and doesn't know what type of route it wants to take and what tone it wants to focus on. This is just a dismal comedy. Now here's a recap of the movies I reviewed on this program. I gave 3 stars to Wonder Woman. I thought it was a very solid superhero summer flick that never took itself too seriously and was still quite a bit of fun. 3 stars to Captain Underpants, the first epic movie, a very lowbrow comedy that's mostly going to be aimed at kids, but for that audience I think it's going to hit right on the mark, and it still has some decent characters and some great animation that I think adults won't be too bored with the film. 2 stars for Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales, another retread through the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, which, despite the addition of Javier Bardem, doesn't really add anything new to this franchise. And 1 star for Baywatch, a dismally unfocused comedy that can't decide if it's trying to be a knowing parody of the TV series or a distant action comedy just using the name. Remember, you can read more of my reviews at moviespoon.com or movieswithmark.com, and if you like the show, well, feel free to support it on Patreon. My name is Mark McPherson, and thank you for watching.